You're not alone. Life was hard and then got harder. Just before the kind of Christmas period, catching COVID, and then it just kind of had a bit of a knock-on effect, if you like. You know, I was down, wasn't able to leave the house, literally not able because of isolation. And then, yeah, it just made me feel a bit like I was losing myself again. So then, yeah, a lot of self-doubt. Then obviously going back to work, I'm like, can I still do the job I'm doing? Even going out in public after COVID, even feeling a bit low, it's like you just think, are people looking at me? Maybe they can see I'm a bit down. You know, you might greet someone who you talk to every day, but just by the way you say hello, you just think, you know, have they realised I'm feeling down? Or, yeah. So I think that was probably the last time, yeah.
So another thing that's interesting for me about the link between mental health and the soca community is that we love carnival, we love music, we love soca. But sometimes do we really listen to the lyrics? There's a lot in the lyrics, there's a lot in the words that we say in terms of performers and the lyrics that are used that are actually could be quite detrimental to our mental health. So I think it's really important for artists and consumers alike to think about the lyrics that we're consuming.
I think I realised I was in a depression when I came out of it. That for me was the reflection time, you know, when I started to come out of it, which is when I went to volunteer at an organisation called Haringey Mencap, which is, I still work there now, almost 8 years later. But it was when I started to see the light of day, I was like, this is what I was going through. Boy, I must have been in a depression. And ironically, working for Haringey Mencap, I then went and did a mental health course. It's called a mental health first aid course. And it was in that I recognized all these things that they were describing that people that go through depression go through. And I was like, wow.
My definition of darkness will be not being in a position. When I say not being in a position, everybody goes through struggles and you go through hard times, but not being in a position to see it next day. Like I really and truly fight. Every day I get up, I give thanks for seeing the next day because I know how valuable and how important it is. And darkness to me is by losing the opportunity to try. Losing the opportunity, like that's one of my pet peeves. It's like my Achilles heel is I always want an opportunity to do better. So if something happened, and that's why I always ask for feedback, because I always want to be better than yesterday. I always want to be a better version of myself yesterday. So for me, my definition of darkness is not having the opportunity to do that.
For anyone who's ever hit rock bottom emotionally, I think they could understand this. But that's darkness. There's literally, lack of better words, the epitome of darkness. You don't see no way out. You can't see around. You can't see a hand in front of your face. Yeah. Everything is caving. Yeah. And like the prior question, you know, is because of those same emotions. Like I can't do nothing with. Yeah.
I think when I started to acknowledge that something was wrong, it was when, you know, I was drinking excessively. I was doing things out of my normal character. You know, just after work, going out and being out till late, and coming home and still being in a bit of a daze. If I was to try and put a time frame on it, I would say a year into it, really. But when, yeah, I think at that point that's when I realized I needed help, and it was actually speaking to my best friend who suggested that I go and speak to someone that isn't a part of my friendship circle, someone that isn't a part of my family, but someone who can just be a different set of ears for you to listen So yeah, I would say a year into it roughly, yeah.
In our community, showing weakness shows that you're less of a man, you know, because there's already so many things that try to bring us as men. And I have to say men more so than women. And I'm not trying to be in a gender kind of way. But the reality is because there's so much pressure on us as men to be breadwinners, to be the rock or the foundation or the head of the home, showing that little bit of weakness, some people will find it off-putting, or some people will be like, oh, he don't really have anything about him.
I just think it's just kind of just from generation to generation, really. It's that kind of older way of thinking. I know obviously our ancestors and grandparents, etc., they just got on with stuff. Obviously us being kind of the ethnic and minority, we always have to prove and do more. So again, there's more stress on us to just do the basics that other people could do anyway. We've got a lot more stress to actually do those simple tasks. So yeah, I think it's just a thing that we just say, you know, it's a bad day or it's a bad week, we'll shake it off, we'll bounce back, and we just have to keep going. In theory, it sounds good, but you know, if we're being practical and day to day, it's probably the most detrimental thing to do because it's just damaging us as people and as a community.
So there are a couple of things that you can look out for when noticing a possible change in mental state. Think about your motivation. Do you feel like you don't really want to do what you used to do? Are there things that maybe brought you joy before but aren't necessarily bringing you joy anymore? Are you having difficulty in leaving the house? Do you find sometimes that you really want to cry, or there's emotions that you want to share but they feel like you're holding them back? It's really important to listen to the people around you and notice those changes. So if you've got a friend, a family member, they don't want to come out of the house, they don't really want to talk as much, they're isolating themselves, they seem a bit distant, it's really important to check in.
When I first realized how difficult things were getting for me was when I had my first diagnosis of my underlying issues, and this was almost 10 years ago. And when because I was so confused, I'm fit and healthy, and I still ended up in hospital for like 2 weeks. And they said, the only way we can help you is by giving you a little bit of this, a little bit of drugs, and that is it. And then I had to go and research and try and figure out different ways to help myself. And throughout the years, I kept on saying, no, I could deal with this, but I was always finding something to fill the void.
I think the deepest time for me was this, and this is going to sound ridiculous to some people, yeah, but Trinidad Carnival 2014 gave me the wickedest tabanka ever, because my wife, my brother, my friends, everybody was going Trinidad, and you couldn't escape what they were doing because you were on social media. Social media was your friend at that time. And I really got to the point where I was like, I wonder if I could end it all. And I started to analyze what I'd need to do to make sure that I didn't leave my wife like fully loaded. And I came to the conclusion that I couldn't afford to commit suicide. And that in itself made me even more depressed. But it was when I actually got out of it in 2014 that I started to look back and say, yes, that's where you were.
That's simple. The main one, money or lack thereof. Yeah. As soon as I take a L, shit, bro, you're doing stupidness. You could do better, you could do this, you shouldn't do that. It happens all the time because it's just me. You see, I am sole breadwinner for my life. You understand? And because of that, what you see happening a lot is I'd have a lot of negative thoughts with the slightest inconvenience. You know, it doesn't stop me, but it happens. But sometimes, like I said before, it's crippling.
So when my mum passed away, I only cried, I think, like once, and that was in the church at the funeral. I remember it, and literally I didn't cry again. Like, that was it. So I just really bottled up a lot of my emotions and how I was feeling about everything. Family, friends have asked me, like, how do you feel? Some of my closest friends are like, when you're with Mers, like, if he's feeling that way, like, just don't even mention it, because they just don't know how to take me with that situation. But I think it was about a Carnival 20, maybe 16 or 17. And literally I saw something that just reminded me of my mum. And I remember being on the truck actually at Carnival and just breaking down, literally crying, like uncontrollable tears, to the point where literally I jumped off the side of the truck, like into one of my friends. So he just caught me. And I remember the band, like so many people who know me on like kind of soca scene in the UK. I remember seeing so many of them in that band, and literally it was like half the band just ran over, and like literally everyone cried with me in the middle of Carnival. It was crazy, but that was probably one of my lowest times. And I think overcoming it again is just trying to have a bit of a support system. Again, I know it's cliche, but just talk, like get it out. If you need to cry, cry. They always say, you know, men don't cry, you know, be a man, man up. Like, these things is just waffle. Like cry if you need to cry. If anything, crying makes you more of a man, and I'm saying that. So if anyone has a problem with that, come chat to me. But honestly, if you're a man, don't be you know, shy to cry. Same if you're a woman and you know you're strong, independent, and all these things, and you don't want to be seen as weak. Cry. Like, it doesn't make you weak; it makes you stronger. So yeah, let out whatever emotion you feel. There's no such thing as like a wrong emotion. So I see it. That's what you're going through. So go through it.
I think as Caribbeans, we try and brush a lot of things under the carpet. We're taught growing up that, not to say that it comes from like discipline necessarily, because, you know, there's a very traditional format in how, you know, West Indian peoples discipline their children and stuff like that. And usually you're taught to, you know, you have to brush it off and get on with things. So I think it kind of boils down to tradition, in terms of how people are raised, and especially in black men, especially like in West Indian men, where as men we are taught to, you know, phrases like "don't be such a girl," or you know, brush it off, or be brave, be strong. You're a man. Even as a young boy, you're a man, so be strong. So these things are words that have been put in the atmosphere for years, and it's not just it's not something that has just happened overnight. These are things that have been spoken about for years and years, and you know, you're told that as a young boy you need to be a certain way, you need to hold yourself in a certain way, you need to be confident, you need to be strong. No one talks about when you are, as a young man, you're afraid, or as a young boy, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be sensitive, it's okay to... So I think until those issues are highlighted and underlined more, there will always be that stigma around mental health, especially in young Caribbean and older Caribbean men as well.
So another thing that we have to remember is that in the UK, 3/4 of male deaths are attributed to suicide every year. So it's really important to look out for those signs, have conversations with people, and not just say, oh, don't worry, you'll be all right, keep it pushing. Really listen to people. If you haven't heard from your friend, reach out. If you haven't been out with them, haven't gone to their house, haven't texted them, sent them a WhatsApp, spoken to them on Instagram, whatever it is you usually do, if you see a change in behaviours, it's really important at this time to check on people.